So to get us underway, would you please give a very warm welcome to corporate anthropologist Michael Henderson.
So I just thought to start off with and make it very, very clear, when I was sitting in the chair, the smoke that appeared behind me wasn't due to me. I'd hate that to go down on my CV as the guy that did that on TED. I thought for a moment that actually they were running out of time and decided to cut speaker number one, gas him now. So I'm still glad to be here. I thought I'd start off with a story my grandfather told me. This is many years ago, about a worker in a Russian factory not long after the revolution in the new Soviet Union. And at the end of every workday, the workers would leave the factory, go down to the gates of the factory and be stopped by security guards. And they would be searched to ensure that they weren't taking any tools or any equipment or even any of the motherland's resources out of the factory. And this one particular worker used to kind of wheel a wheelbarrow with him, and he would carry his grey coat for the winter in there, and perhaps a basket to carry his lunch in. And the security guards every day would stop him, search under the coat, make sure the basket didn't have any tools, etc. And this went on day after day, week after week, for years and years. And after 4 or 5 years, it was found that this particular worker had skipped the Soviet Union, apparently with a very large sum of money. Turned out he'd been stealing wheelbarrows. I suspect this happens a lot with company culture, that in fact company culture wheels in and out of the building on a daily basis, but no one actually pays attention to it. And that traditionally, that maybe didn't need to be an issue in the last century, but I think this century, it's something we increasingly need to be paying attention to in organizations, because people, and even what we're all doing here today, playing with ideas, have actually started to contribute far more to organizations in that way than perhaps they have ever before. And as an anthropologist, I find that fascinating. So the field of corporate anthropology is literally the discovery and the search for what is the nature of people in organizations. Now, I got into corporate anthropology almost by mistake. I graduated at Auckland University in anthropology, highly recommend their anthropological programs. And on graduation, the professor gave me some very good advice. He said, 2 things I need to let you know, Michael. Number 1, congratulations, you will never be bored for the rest of your life. You're an anthropologist, we just don't suffer boredom. Second thing he says, you're unemployable. Good luck with that. Turned out he was right on both counts. Very difficult to get a job when you roll up and say, hi, I'm an anthropologist, where do I start? So I took off to London, as we Kiwis do, and went on an OE, and decided that I better go and sort of get a real job. I think that's what my mother called it. Joined an advertising sort of group in London, and was selling advertising in that particular market in the 1980s. And had been with the company for about a month, and suddenly there was called a crisis meeting, which I didn't know what that meant. I thought maybe the building was burning down, but it turned out it had something to do with financial figures, and we weren't doing as well as we could have done. And this gentleman came up on stage, very distinguished-looking chap, and there was hundreds of us sort of brought together to sit at his feet. And he was introduced as the CEO, and I didn't know much about business, so I kind of went, well, CEO, what's that? So I leant across to the person next to me and said, what's a CEO? He said, well, it's the Chief Executive Officer. And I just went, whoa, because that first word as an anthropologist captured me, of course. So I went, cool. So I pulled out my little black notebook and got my pen ready. 2 things you should know. Anybody carrying a black notebook is one of 2 things. They're an anthropologist or they're a policeman. They both asked the same question initially. So what is it you're doing here? Anthropologists tend to do with a matter of inquiry. The police, it's done a little bit more threatening. So I listened to this guy talk, and he talked about how badly the organization was performing, how results hadn't been what they should have been, that we needed to lift our endeavors and our efforts, that times were tough, and that really we needed to pull together more and kind of make this thing happen. Now, the interesting thing about his talk was he didn't actually use the words, but he made it very, very clear it was our fault. And I thought, wow, this is really interesting, because I've been in this organization for about a month now, and I suddenly clicked. This guy didn't realize that he was head of a cult, not a culture. Now, most businesses don't know the distinction between those two and how that happens and what it delivers. So I kind of wrote that down. I thought, wow, this is really interesting. Well, he's got no idea. The difference being that in a cult, a leader sees greatness in themselves. In a culture, the leader sees greatness in the people, of course. So it was kind of interesting, even from his comments, I started to realize he doesn't realize he's actually set up a cult. So a lot of the performance issues he was blaming everyone else for, in fact, I believe, possibly was a reflection of his